Welcome to the group chat with Tara Thomas and Amanda Goodman of Faith and Four Letter Words.
Yeah, happy Friday. Better late than never. So funny. My son needed to use my computer this week. He's off school now for the summer. So I had to tiptoe into his basement bedroom to grab the computer, and therefore we're a couple minutes late as a result. So thank you for sticking and staying with the group chat. On Wednesday, I was out for medical tests, and Amanda was going to do the honors as solo anchor. She was unable to get the live stream going due to some technical issues. So all is well. We're back, and I'm soloing again today because her daughter is getting into the semifinal round. So they'll be heading to Ames with her daughter's soccer team. So go Gia and go Hudson. We're excited to see how that goes. And if they win today, then I know they're going to go to the championship game. And I think that's scheduled for tomorrow. So exciting time for her daughter. And this is a great time, of course, for so many to be with family and friends celebrating graduation. So her mom and her sister also are here, which is wonderful that they made it in, flying into the Midwest despite what's been a crazy, crazy weather week. If you joined us Monday, then you know that I drove through on Sunday from Peoria all the way through to Waterloo, probably the worst torrential downpours I've ever been a part of. And they were really intermittent. So it would hit heavy rain and then it would lift and then start again. And so this stop and start, the fit and spurt of this went on for almost the entire, so it was like a 4-hour ordeal. It normally would take me about 3 hours, 20 minutes, but that was Sunday. And so then it was like deja vu, because Wednesday in Dubuque, my son's baseball games, only one was played because the crazy weather hit on Wednesday, and it was like diagonal pelting rain and hail, and we barely got out of the field into our car before then we had to go through more of the same that I experienced on Sunday. Not fun. So there was a giant tree down blocking part of that main drag through, the highway that comes there into Dubuque. So very treacherous conditions. So hopefully everyone watching is safe and your home, cars, and all the things were not seriously damaged, because it was a crazy, crazy weather week, and hopefully nicer days ahead, because there were so many things that had to be canceled or delayed. And that's the Midwest, right? We look so forward to the summer and nicer weather. And then when it comes with it, we deal with like the tornado warnings and the severe thunderstorms and all the things. So unfortunately, it's not necessarily a great time weather-wise when we should be enjoying warmer temps. If you're just joining us, I'm Tara Thomas, and I am one half of the duo called Faith and Four Letter Words, where we want to empower women of all ages and stages, and men too, because men care about their wives, mothers, and daughters. And we did have plans for a show Wednesday night in Marengo, a rescheduled show at Fireside Winery. It had to be rescheduled from April because I was in a car crash. And then Wednesday, with the severe weather warnings and all of the crazy, we opted to cancel Wednesday's show because we knew that there were some older people that had purchased tickets, and we did not want anybody to drive in severe weather or get stuck at a venue and then feel like they weren't safe to drive home. So thanks for bearing with us. We hated that we want to postpone, not cancel that Marengo show. So we're working with organizers, Kylie and crew, to see if they can reschedule it soon. And we were hoping to get it rescheduled to as early as July. So we will wait to find out what Fireside says works for them. But, abundance of caution, did not want you or any friends or family to be driving in crazy weather or stuck in a situation where you felt like you couldn't leave because of a tornado watch or warning. So we are hopeful that upcoming Wednesday, will be fine for travel. And we do have another show coming up on Wednesday, and I want to confirm this location. So yes, it's at Reedland, coming up on Wednesday, June 17th. So if you're in the Reedland area or can be, if you can drive there, we'd love to see you in person 6 to 8 p.m. on Wednesday, June 17th. And it will be a fun opportunity to connect with us in person. So my friend, college friend, very close friend, Gina, we had mentioned she was planning to come this week, and she was actually going to hang out with my family and then go with me to attend Amanda's daughter's graduation party. Well, Gina, who is like Amanda, also from Pennsylvania and currently lives there, she unfortunately had this accident where she was walking down the stairs in her house and she was on her phone or holding her phone, and she tripped and she broke 2 bones in her ankle. And so I'm wishing her a speedy recovery, but she then had to cancel her plans to come here and postpone the trip due to obviously her inability to get around very easily with 2 broken ankle bones. So prayers that she does not need surgery. They said if she keeps weight off of it for a couple of weeks, then she may not need surgery. So that's our hope, that Gina can fully recover and come back. And she was actually going to be my co-host today, or Amanda's guest interview subject today on the group chat. So the seat's empty now, but we're still keeping it warm for you, G, whenever you are able to make it back out to Iowa. This print, I purposely put this on when I was looking through what summer maxi dress could I grab out of the closet. It's actually a dress, but it's funny because this is almost an optical illusion kind of print. And back in our anchor days, we would not have worn this on the news because we had to really opt for, the solid. So there was nothing distracting, but it looks kind of cool. And it has some blue in the pattern that goes down as a maxi dress. So I checked the forecast and it's supposed to be quite warm today. So I thought this is the time. Get in your closet and pull out, that light, airy summer dress that you always say, oh, it's too cold to wear. It's too cold to wear. Well, today it should be hot enough that you can wear it. But what's crazy is if you're like me and work in a cold office, you wear something with the outside temps in mind, and then you're, freezing the whole day at work. So that's kind of the trade-off when we work indoors in the Midwest, right? Especially in the summer, they always have the air conditioning blazing, or on full blast, I should say. Okay, I'm going to pull up our Faith in 4-letter words trusty stream so I can read the comments. And also, thanks again for those of you who joined me Monday. We had a very long and lively conversation with yours truly solo anchoring about all the things that come into play when you have aging parents and the decisions that have to be made around all of the estate planning elements and things like that. So it was great to get the feedback and input from so many of you, because these are very important and critical conversations. And I've talked to a lot of people about it, and they're just not having those conversations because of this discomfort or this feeling of my parents, don't want to talk about their future because it's depressing if they have to make and talk about death decisions. And so it was interesting because I talked to my mom after the fact, Joanne, and she was saying, yeah, that's just a conversation a lot of people don't want to have. And so I'm grateful that my mom is in the camp of, being really proactive. And we've talked about all the things where her estate and her planning are concerned. My friend Jenny is watching. Hi, beautiful. Happy Friday. Thank you so much for that. Patrice, Mary, Katie. Thank you, Katie. She said, love all your cute clothes. I appreciate that. I'm a big fan of, the cheap purchases. So I love Ross, and we have a Ross in the Cedar Valley. And I, for years, would go to Ross whenever we would go to Las Vegas or out west, because they always had a lot of Ross stores. And then now in the last, few years, when they had a Ross here, and then in my hometown of Peoria, my mom and I like to say, we like to sashay, through the stores. And it's crazy, the stuff I have found at Ross. I mean, there have been so many times where I needed a dress for an occasion, and I would go, day before or week of, and I could run into Ross, and for $12 find like a beautiful dress or some really cute ensemble at Ross for very inexpensive. So if you're one who likes a good bargain, check out Ross. They should be a sponsor of us because this dress is from Ross, and it's got like a cinched waist, which is nice with kind of a blue, almost kind of like a Charlie Brown, pattern going through it. So not trying to look like I'm a part of Charlie Brown by any means, but it's just a good summer dress. So of course, with the humidity comes our hair issues. I have mentioned it in a piece I wrote for Faith and 4-Letter Words that I'm not a fan of shampooing my hair because it's so much work. So my mom last Saturday when I was home for that alumni banquet for my high school that I emceed, my mom said, "Oh, I'll blow dry your hair," because I said I need to shampoo it. Well, when I shampooed it, and it's still obviously thinner than when I was younger, but it's still thick enough. I still have enough of it that it takes a while to dry. And so my mom was really nice blow drying it. And then she said, "Yeah, this is crazy how long it takes you." Because I usually, if I do it myself, I just like to let it air dry and then it's really wavy. Well, because of being pelted with hail and rain this week and then having all the humidity, it's not doing great right now. It's just kind of in that mode that we get sometimes where it just kind of hangs. So normally, if we had had our show Wednesday night, I would have put more effort into it. But I knew once we, canceled or postponed our show, that I really didn't have the interest in shampooing it or styling it more in a more exciting way, because tonight my son has another baseball doubleheader. So I will be outside in this humidity and then obviously on the ball field with the dust and all the things for many hours tonight. So I just said, you know what, I'm just going to let it go. And I just, brush it. And I feel sometimes like I'm like Cher back in those Sonny and Cher days where she would have like the long straight, hair with a little bit of wave maybe at the bottom. So those of you right now who are feeling the hair challenges of the humidity, I can totally relate. Because if you're like me and you have a lot of natural wave and body, it doesn't really render great in the humidity. It just kind of looks like a wet dog that, came inside and, and dried off. That's kind of how you feel, especially after you've been through some of the crazy outdoor weather. And then you come inside and then you're just like, oh my gosh, like this is, it's not fun, right? It's not enjoyable because it really kills the enjoyment of outdoor events. And then after all the rain, of course, all the bugs now, all the mosquitoes will emerge. So it's nice that my husband went on ChatGPT or artificial intelligence. And last year and this year, he identified like 4 plants that have the properties to repel mosquitoes. And then he planted a pot with these 4 plants. I can't even tell you what they are, but they sell them at a lot of the local greenhouses. And then when you put these plants in said pot and you sit it on your front porch or wherever you're going to be seated, it does act, it seems, as a deterrent because the bugs don't like whatever scent the plants give off, the mosquitoes, but you can't smell it. So it's not like a human turnoff, but it is something that repels the mosquitoes. I think it works because we've had them this set up on our front porch last year and this year. And so far, when I've been out there, it doesn't seem like I have a ton of bug bites, but Amanda is too. We talked about this. We're the universal donors. And so if your blood type is the universal donor for whatever reason, supposedly, then you emit a scent where mosquitoes are like more attracted to you. And so I have been known to get crazy bug bites in situations where many other people will say, "Oh, I didn't even know there were mosquitoes around." And then you've got like, bites up your arms and legs. My mom too is somewhat of a mosquito magnet. So maybe there's a genetic component to it as well. Good morning, Monique. She said, "You look very nice this day. Hope you will have an awesome weekend." You too, mon ami. I appreciate her. She reached out Wednesday and she's like, "What happened to your show?" Well, Amanda was at home and she was having technical difficulties just getting the live stream to start up on her phone. And so she was unable to do the show on Wednesday. So it was sad. We were like, we went dark. We were on hiatus when Wednesday morning came around and we couldn't join you. So I'm glad that I was able to jump on the live stream this morning. If you're just joining me, I had to go downstairs in Thomas, my son's bedroom, to retrieve the computer because he's been using the computer now that he's home for the summer. And for those of you who have teenagers off for the summer, obviously home, you know it can be challenging, especially in the case of my house, because my husband is retired and then our son is going into his senior year of high school. And so they tend to clash over all the things, like my son not picking up after himself, my son not doing more around the house to help, like chores, and then my husband probably feeling like his schedule and his day is disrupted because now you have my son home a lot more. And then with me still working, it's like I'm kind of in and out. So sometimes I have to be the referee and the mediator when I'm here. And they tend to argue about my husband wants everything to be done early or before you do anything else. And my son is in the camp of like, I'll do one thing and then I'll relax. And then maybe I'll do it another thing later. And that, you know, so they just have a clash of rhythm and choices over how they like to get things done. And so it's kind of like, I say my son is like a male version of me, where he tends to be laid back. And then our daughter is more like a female version of my husband, where they're both kind of high strung people. So they have like this almost like level sense of urgency. I'll put it to you that way, that my son and I do not. And so those personalities tend to clash, right? If one of you is, and I'm not lazy, but I'm definitely more laid back at times than my husband. And so there's that level of, with my son, my husband wants him to have more urgency around doing all the things. And my son will say things like, well, I'm just going to relax the rest of the day, or I'm going to go downstairs and, you know, just play video games or whatever. And so I think it's also a generational divide, right? Because when you have kids later in life, as my husband and I did with our son, my husband being older, now that he's in retirement, he's like 2 generations ahead of our son. And so he had a completely different childhood, as all of you watching can relate, because his childhood was like no electronics, never watch TV, outside, sun up to sundown, always playing, always working. When he got in high school, always doing all the things that kids today tend to not necessarily wholeheartedly embrace. So with our son, he is very busy right now with baseball because of all the practices and the games. But now that school ended, it definitely freed up, you know, some of his time. And so I like to say that my husband retired so he can argue full time with our son. That's kind of where we're at. Now, my daughter, Charlotte, our daughter, she went back to Arizona for the month of June, but she will be home for the month of July. So it's going to be an interesting July. I'm cautiously optimistic about it because we're going to have potentially all 4 of us together home at the same time, which has never happened, right? Because I've never been off with being in between jobs. I've never had that much time. I went from one job right into the other job every time I've moved career or switched jobs. So I've never had like a break. And so I was thinking to myself this morning, God, I'm appreciative that I'm going to have hopefully some time before I start another job to just enjoy being with my family. And then I thought the human side of me kicked in and I was like, well, it's not going to be easy because there's going to be the clash, right, of personalities when you have all of us together spending so much time together when usually we're constantly coming and going and on the move. And so, yeah, so Charlotte probably has no idea what she's getting into when she comes home. And she's only going to be here for 1 month, the month of July. And we'll probably see her most of the time, but she's going to be working, doing a paid internship actually with our church, which I'm so excited for her about. And then she has a boyfriend that's actually from Kansas City that she met in Arizona, and he will be home, I believe, at his house in July. So I'm guessing there might be 1 or 2 trips to Kansas City during that time because they'll probably want to see one another. So it's exciting though. She's 20. Our son is 17. He'll be turning 18 the end of the summer and then go into his senior year. And so, I mean, we are like really closing in on having two adults, young adults in our house, which is a huge transition, as those of you who have gone through it or who are empty nesters can relate. So a couple things that I wanted to share. The first one is, if you are a fan of watching shows or series on Netflix, I have some updates, some reviews to tell you about. The first one is the Office romance movie with Jennifer Lopez and Brett Goldstein. He's the guy who was the soccer star from Ted Lasso. If you like Ted Lasso, great series that I loved, that my husband and I loved. So he plays this really gruff, always cursing like a sailor soccer player. And then in Office Romance, he and Jennifer Lopez are the leads and the love interests, if you will. I'm just not, I think she's funny in those rom-coms, you know, romantic comedies. And I think that she did a good job in the role, but a lot of it is just kind of like cheesy, weird dialogue, far-fetched scenarios. So it's definitely one of those, you don't have to think, kind of feel good movies. But I think in my mind, I just was thinking, oh, maybe this will be a little bit better than my expectation should have been set. And it did not exceed my expectations. It was just kind of whatever. So if you want a mindless show, it's not a bad choice, but I feel like there's a lot of other better entertainment options out there, especially ones where you have to think a little bit. And I know one of them that comes to mind is, and we've talked about this, of all the series, and I've watched, like, you name it, pretty much every series that has any critical acclaim, there are quite a few that I think are worth your time if you want something that's a little bit more, you know, intellectually stimulating. So there's some that are older that came to mind that I wanted to share. There's Mare of Easttown, is this excellent show where this lady is like a detective and she's a popular actress, and I need to pull up her name because that show was so well done, and she played just this really cool character. And the show, yeah, here we go. And I know it's Kate Winslet. She's excellent. She's the lead. Of course, Kate Winslet from Titanic fame. And it's just such a well done storyline and the dialogue and everything. So I highly recommend Mare of Easttown. There's only been one season of it, and it came out in 2021. And then if you've been getting on Netflix, you may have seen that they are pushing or promoting at the top of your choices this new comedy series called Shrill. Okay, this is what I will tell you. It has some inappropriate elements. The language and themes can be not for children by any means. But this is what I will tell you, that it's that Addie or Adie Bryant who's the lead, and she was on SNL, and I'm not a huge modern SNL person, but I watch Saturday Night Live or have seen clips on TikTok that she's been a part of. So I sort of knew her from there. But let me tell you, this series Shrill, if you love the series Girls, okay, and Girls was just a very popular American comedy drama that played out in 6 seasons, starting back in 2012 on HBO. Lena Dunham was the star and the writer and producer of that show. She is hilarious. The characters and the development of characters, I thought, in that series were excellent. And it had Allison Williams, Brian Williams' daughter, the news anchor's daughter, is one of the other co-stars in that. So if you loved Girls and you like Lena Dunham, you will love Shrill, because it's just the same kind of sarcastic, dark humor, and it is hilarious, some of the parts. And so she's this heavier set girl who's trying to navigate life when she feels like she's being judged for various reasons, you know, for her body type or other interesting situations she finds herself in. So I think that you'll enjoy Shrill, again, if you at all have ever enjoyed or watched that Girls series. And then, of course, going back to, I've mentioned it, like this is my third time, I think, mentioning it. I'm a huge fan of all the Yellowstone shows that have then been born out of, that Taylor Sheridan writing and producing spree that he's been on. So when you go to the prequels of Yellowstone, if you're a fan of those, there's the 1923, that whole, all those prequels, that whole series, I think is so well done. Now, Yellowstone is 5 seasons. It debuted in 2018, and I loved Yellowstone. But admittedly, as the seasons progressed, a couple of my friends have said it just got too violent or too almost far-fetched for them. And so they didn't enjoy it nearly as much. But what I will tell you is those prequels to Yellowstone, 1883 and then 1923, are just excellent television in my view. And I think you will love both of those if you are a fan of Gilded Age, Downton Abbey, or Bridgerton. Bridgerton being the B version, right, of those period dramas, but still I've enjoyed that, and I enjoy how they infuse popular music into all of their orchestras that perform at the balls. It's just a cool touch that Shonda Grimes, I think is her name, did. But if you like any of those, Bridgerton, Gilded Age, or Downton Abbey, then I promise you, you will love 1883, and then you'll love 1923. And I was looking here, you should watch 1883 first, because it's the direct origin story of the Dutton family who are featured in Yellowstone. And then 1883 should be followed by 1923, because it then picks up where what happened to the family 40 years later. Then once you get through Yellowstone and then potentially those 2 prequels, you're going to want to watch the newly released Dutton Ranch. And that Dutton Ranch is the spinoff where you have Beth and Rip, who you will come to know and love if you watch Yellowstone. They then have relocated to Texas with the son, and they have quite an interesting turn of events that happens with their ranch. So I'm riveted by it, and my mom enjoys it. And so we always say, hey, did you watch the latest episode? And, keep tabs on who's watching what. Now, in addition to Yellowstone, I really like Your Friends and Neighbors, and that's Jon Hamm, who is the lead in that, and that's on HBO. But it's a dark series as well. So again, when I tell you I like these shows, by no means am I a fan of or purporting to support some of the themes and content, because it's very much adult level humor, and there's some inappropriate curse words and all those things that, play into the fact that it's a paid entertainment option for you on some of those pay channels. So definitely not for kids, right? Not the kind of show you're going to sit down with young people and enjoy. But if you are into any and all of the character development that happens with some of these heavily dialogued series, I think Jon Hamm does a great job in his portrayal of just a person who's troubled in his middle age. Let me put it to you that way. Now, a fun fact, in the prequel for Yellowstone, they have a lot of Native American acting and, individuals that are a part of telling that story. And my husband was so happy to see one of his former students is in one of the Yellowstone prequels as a Native American who plays somebody that in this role is like, wearing some of the headdress and the makeup of like a traditional Native American. And so it's so cool that my husband knows this former student, of course, seeing him on the big screen. And fun fact, if I've never shared this, it's kind of neat that my husband, who grew up he was born in Washington State, and he grew up in a town called Toppenish, Washington, which is in the lower valley of the Yakima Valley, where I used to be a news anchor. And in Toppenish, they are known for murals that they have all over town that depict these Western scenes from, decades before. And they like to say their town theme is kind of where the West still lives, which is cool. And so they have very much all these elements that reflect like your traditional Western town, with like the general store and just some of the way the town architecture and layout is. It totally could be the backdrop for a Western period drama. So he was there many, many years teaching on the White Swan Reservation, and the Yakima Indians, and you spell it Yakama is the way they spell their tribe, are still very much a part of, and their traditions live on in that whole area. And then Yakima, Washington, which is the city where I was a news anchor, it's spelled Yakima, and our TV station call letters were KIMA. So I was in Yakima for 7 years. That's where I met my now husband, Dave. And then he followed me out to Iowa in 2005. And he sometimes, many times, has said, "What am I doing in Iowa?" So he was a good sport and followed his then girlfriend to a little town called Waterloo. And anyway, back when he was teaching in White Swan on this Native American reservation where he taught for years, almost 2 decades, he really got close with a lot of the families. And so what an honor for him that they really accepted him and respected him. And he loves the Native American culture that proliferated there. And he misses many of his Native American students and families. And he has stayed in touch with them thanks to a thing called social media, right? So he's able to be very connected to all of the people from his past, as am I. I met a lot of these people when I lived there too and got to know him. So after he taught in Toppenish, he taught in Wapato, which is another school district that has a ton of diversity. So a lot of Latino, Native American, and Filipino student population. And then when he came here, it was funny. He got the job in Waterloo to be a teacher at Waterloo West. And I had more than multiple people. I was a news anchor here at the time, but multiple people said to me, "Oh gosh, Waterloo West is really diverse. Your husband's going to have a lot of, non-white students." And I laughed. I said, "Listen, this is the most white students he's ever had in Waterloo, because where he's taught for his whole career, it was like 90% students of color. So it was all, again, Latino, Native American, and Filipino, and a very small percentage of white students." And so for him, when he started teaching at West and he would walk down the halls, West seems really diverse if you've only been in like rural or predominantly white Iowa. But to him, West was like the most white kids ever, because it's only, back then when he started in 2005, it was still majority white in that school. And then over time now, in the last 20 years, the population has really grown with students of color in Waterloo. And so now it's probably about a 50-50 split of students of color and white students. And then, of course, what's really bizarre is the Bosnian students and a lot of the Eastern European families that settled here in the early 2000s, they count those students as like white, when really they are raised with, oftentimes totally different cultures. So it's just kind of funny how that has changed over time, where the Bosnian and Eastern European families are so integrated into the culture here that they then, on the census or when you're tracking demographics in the schools, they like count them as white, which is unique, but then also somewhat disrespectful, because they're not living the white traditional Midwest culture in many respects, because a lot of them are bilingual and they have, their own cultures and customs from their heritage. And so my husband has really very much enjoyed having Bosnian students over the years and getting to know some of their history and their background. And no surprise, right? When you're immersed in Waterloo and the diversity, you tend to make close friendships with so many people from different backgrounds. So my daughter and my son have been friends with kids from Africa who have come here for various reasons with their families over time. And then, of course, currently my son is dating a girl who happens to be Bosnian, and she's just a beautiful girl and so sweet. And so it's fun that I've gotten to know her family a little bit. And for those of you who know Bosnian families or have been a part of that culture at all, they just have an incredibly strong work ethic and they're very academically oriented students. So it's very common that when you see, the top 10 or 20 kids graduating from the Waterloo schools, there will often be Bosnian or those of that heritage that have made it into the top academically. They just definitely have a focus on achievement, which is really honorable and cool. So I love that, and I wanted to just share that for those of you that might be in a more rural area who haven't been exposed to some of these different cultures like what we have in Waterloo. I like to say it's really like the United Nations here for Eastern Iowa, which people from the outside looking in are like, what are you talking about? Everybody there is like white living, in a cornfield. And the truth is, no, there's a lot more diversity in pockets of it, especially in Waterloo. So I continue to ramble on and on as these solo anchor shows go, but I wanted to pull up the comments again. If you're just joining us, I'm Tara, soloing. Amanda's with family heading to Ames for her daughter's semifinal state soccer game. So we can't wait to hear how that ends up. We're optimistic that they will make it to the championship game. Alice said, morning, sweet lady. Love your dress. Thank you. That's 2 compliments for this dress. I had something else planned to wear. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to wear one of my summer dresses. So I grabbed this out of the back of the closet. So that's my challenge to you ladies today. Grab something in the back of the closet that you have not worn for a long time. And here's the reason I implore you to do that, because if we don't wear it at least once during this year, then the unspoken rule is we're supposed to get rid of it. So I'm actually trying to wear all the things right now that I pulled into my sort of summer, spring closet wardrobe to say, if you're not going to wear it now, when are you going to wear it? Because this is nice weather. It's now warm weather. So pull out some of that summer attire. And then if you look at it and you say, I really don't like this, or I don't think I'm ever going to wear this, now is the time to purge, right? And get rid of it. So we had a garage sale in May, and I'm so glad we did, because I definitely moved a lot of merchandise, got a lot moved out of here. And one tip is, if you are doing a garage sale, it's not really a tip, it's just kind of an unspoken rule that once it goes outside, once it's in the garage, once it's on Facebook Marketplace, once it's out of your control in that you now are going to donate it or sell it, do not bring it back in. That's the key, right? So everything that you have out there, no matter how valuable you think it is, it may not sell. A lot of it doesn't, because our treasure is trash to others sometimes. But I just feel like you can't bring it back inside, because you'll put it back in a bin. It will collect dust for another year. And then you may or may not get to ever reselling it or trying to sell it. And then someday, maybe not now, but someday you are going to probably have to downsize or move. And then you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I still have a bin of baby clothes and my kid now is in his or her 20s. So it's just like, get rid of it. So we got rid of a lot of stuff. Now, I'm more sentimental than my sister. So I tend to be more of a keeper of the mementos. And my mom had to get rid of pretty much everything because she downsized to a condo. But I do have some cool things that I'm still holding on to. So one thing I have that's really cool is this Hadley pottery collection of my mom's. Hadley pottery is this hand painted, really cool. If you've never heard of it, you can Google it. And my mom even went to, kind of like Amanda's mom, went to the headquarters of Longaberger Baskets. My mom went to the place where Hadley pottery is made and visited the original, factory store. I'm going to pull up Hadley. So it's spelled Hadley, I believe, but let me confirm that with you. And I should bring up one of the pieces sometime to show you. Yeah, it's in Louisville. Kentucky. And so my mom has gone to their store before. It's Hadley Pottery, and it is headquartered historic handcrafted pottery and stoneware located in the Butchertown neighborhood of Louisville, Kentucky, and it was founded in 1940. And it's known for its whimsical hand-painted design. So here's what's cool. So my parents, they have a giant plate that is a Hadley Pottery plate that commemorates their anniversary. And so that's a cool feature. And then we have a birthday plate from Hadley Pottery. And we used to, traditionally on our birthday, my mom would break out the birthday plate and we would eat off the birthday celebrant would eat off the Hadley Pottery plate. So very cool tradition. And some of you right now, as we speak, you probably have the Hummels, or you have the Precious Moments, or the Swarovski crystal, all the things that people tended to collect over the decades. So if you're a person who has all that stuff, good news is there are daughters and descendants like myself who will happily take it and hold on to it. So right now I've got a couple things. I've got my Beatrice Potter figurines. My mom would get my sister and I one figurine every year or for significant milestones like a birthday. And her collection is Bunnykins. And then mine is Beatrice Potter. So mine has all of the characters that coincide with the Beatrice Potter books, like Peter Rabbit and Friends. And then my sister has also the bunnies that are really cool figurines that were called Bunnykins. So I don't know if you guys have heard of either of those, but if you're a Gen Xer, your mom or grandma knows about some of these various collectibles, right? That we all over the years thought at the time were very cool and they were very valuable. And that was just a neat thing to do. I think the modern version of that is probably like Pandora. So my niece has Pandora bracelet with some different charms that you can get. And, back in the day, my cousin, she had a gold chain, and then she would get those little gold bead balls that she would collect on her chain. So I just think it's interesting, the different generations, how we have sort of the collectible craving or the trending collectible thing. There was a time back when my daughter was little where Shopkins were very popular, those little rubber figurines, and they would have all different colors and variety of little figures, like everything from a high heel shoe to a thimble. And she would collect these. So it was cute. My friend Barb, she texted me yesterday. Her daughter Emily is a year older than Charlotte. And she said Emily was home and they were going through, let me find what she said. They were going through some of her stuff. And she said it was so cute that she found some of their Shopkins. And I just remember how much fun they used to have because they would trade their Shopkins on the bus. Oh, she said Pokemon too. So my son and daughter got really into Pokemon and the cards and all the things. And they would have their Shopkins. My daughter would have her Shopkins out. And then my son would lay out all the Pokemon cards. And it was kind of sad because we did sell pretty much all the Shopkins, all the Legos. We sold everything at garage sales, but I did keep some of the Pokemon cards. And I think many of them probably still have retained their value, but there's a part of me sometimes it's like, I need to take those Pokemon cards and just kind of now with AI, just screenshot and see what is the value of these and is it worth trying to sell them, because I don't know that my son, who, as my mom likes to say, would forget his rear end if it weren't hooked on. I don't know if my son is going to be one who's going to travel with the Pokemon cards and preserve them for decades and then pass them down. If he has children, I don't know, maybe we should look at trying to get some value out of them now. So it is 7:46 on this Friday morning. If you are just joining us, thank you for hanging with the group chat. A weird week. I soloed Monday. Amanda had technical difficulties and was unable to do the show Wednesday. And then on today, Friday, June 12th, it's yours truly again. And I'm going to jump to a couple of Bible verses. talked so much about estate planning and all the things on Monday that I didn't even do what's kind of a regular feature of the group chat, and that's Amanda sharing her 4-letter word of the day, which is not an inappropriate word. It's a motivating 4-letter word like rise. That's one and one that's funny that she's used is nope, like not today, Satan. So I think that's funny. So I have a couple of verses to share since I failed to mention one on Monday. This first one is Psalms 27, verse 14. Wait patiently for the Lord. Be brave and courageous. Yes, wait patiently for the Lord. And I love that because I'm in a season of waiting right now, a lot of uncertainty, and that's not uncommon for many of us, right? To be in a period of, it's almost like we're in a holding pattern. So we're in, we're at the airport and we're at the gate, but we're not sure if we're going to get on that plane or are we going to have to, wait until another plane comes along before we board. So that's my analogy today to explain that I'm perpetually right now in the terminal waiting to see which plane I'm going to board. So that's kind of my mantra right now is be okay in the waiting. And then this verse is from Numbers chapter 6, verses 24 to 26. I love this verse. I always say that. I hear or see a verse and I'm like, I forgot how much I love that verse. I think all told, I've read the Bible front to back, so Old Testament and New Testament, I believe 4 times. And it's a living, breathing document. So it's not something like a book where you should read it and put it on a shelf, right? It should always be kind of woven into the fabric of our daily lives. So it's great that we now with technology can easily digest little bits and pieces of verses in the Bible because of apps like the YouVersion app, which is the one a lot of people use. Numbers chapter 6, verses 24 to 26. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Just a beautiful verse. The Bible is like poetry because the words will touch you where and when you need them most, when you least expect it. So I encourage you, open your YouVersion app, open your traditional paper Bible, and just see what verse comes to you and speaks to you, and enjoy that solitude and that quiet, because there's so much noise that we have to cut through it and sometimes just carve out a peaceful place for us to just have communion with God. And that means for me, everything going through seasons and times of tribulation. So I hope you have a great weekend. Lots going on for so many people, from state soccer to baseball to graduation parties. Enjoy this time because these are the good old days that we're living right now. And we'll see you right back here on Monday morning.
Thank you for watching the group chat. The show is brought to you by the empowering staff at Urology Center of Iowa, Canoyer Gardens, Azalea Lane Boutique, and Splendor the Medical Spa.